The Bears are one of the hardest teams to watch in football, and there isn't a single quarterback who's been worse to watch than Justin Fields. How the hell is Chicago 2-2? Like, I really don't understand that shit. This is a terrible team, and you could argue that Fields just had the best game of his season, which isn't saying much. He completed 11 of 22 passes for 165 yards and didn't score a passing touchdown, and he hasn't since week 1. But the good news is that he didn't throw an interception for the first time. The bar is so incredibly low for the Bears, and they still can't even manage to get close to it. Chicago lost 20-12 in an absolute snooze fest to the Giants. It just wasn't fun to watch, and it probably wasn't fun to play for the Bears players either. It just felt like there was no hope there. The Bears did win in week 3, but honestly, it felt like more of a loss. Chicago looked like shit and was sloppy as hell, but did manage to win 23-20, mainly because it was against the Texans. Justin Fields after the game even called his own performance trash, and it was. He only completed 8 of 17 passes, only threw for 106 yards, and oh yeah, Fields managed to turn the ball over 2 times against one of the worst pass defenses in the league. He missed receivers, just didn't see guys that were wide open, and would even miss passes. If it wasn't for Roquan Smith literally having the game of his life with 16 tackles and that game-sealing pick, Chicago would have fallen to 1-2. As crazy as it is, because Fields is so bad, it was still a big improvement from week 2. That was maybe the worst quarterback performance I've seen this year. Kudos to Fields for completing over 50% of his passes for the only time this year though. Yes! 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 I think what was most telling in week 2 was that Chicago clearly didn't trust Fields to air it out. He only threw the ball 11 times all game. He completed 7 of those passes for 70 yards, no touchdowns, but he had a pick. Fields did have a cool pylon diving touchdown early and then should have had another rushing touchdown. The officials said he didn't, but if you watch the replay, he very clearly is in the end zone. But what the hell do I know? Running the ball sort of worked. Chicago did have 180 yards and 6.7 yards per carry, but nobody gives a shit because they lost 27-10 to Green Bay. The Bears just should have been throwing the ball. A lot of people gave Justin Fields a pass for a bad week 1, and I do think that's fair. Chicago's game against the 49ers was in a damn monsoon, and there wasn't really much Fields could have done through the air. He didn't really have a good stat line. 8 of 17 for 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. That being said, he did show a lot of promise. Fields had a rough first half, and then ended up scoring a touchdown on 3 straight drives to win 19-10. One of those was probably one of the best plays I've seen Fields make in the pros. The pocket was collapsing, and he managed to find Dante Pettis for a 51-yard touchdown. It wasn't a good performance. Like, at all. But there was some reason for optimism, and now that shit's just gone. Justin Fields had to show something this season. Like anything, but he hasn't, and he didn't last year either. The Bears sucked and went 2-8 in games he started, and in 12 total games that he played in, Fields threw for 1,870 yards and 7 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He at least had some kind of work on the Darnell Mooney is at the top of that list. Mooney was a guy drafted in fantasy with, at the very least, expectations that he should get targets, but I guess not. He did just have 94 yards on 4 receptions in week 4, but that's a bullshit stat. Take away his 56-yard catch, and it was just another disappointing day. Mooney only had 1 catch in each of the first 2 games of the season for 4 total yards. That's a pretty bad start. Then in week 3, he really improved and had 2 catches. Wow, he hasn't been shit. Coming into week 4, the Bears' number 1 wide receiver was Equanimeous St. Brown. He only had 4 catches for 77 yards. Yeah, that's pretty bad, but I'm sure this will make you feel better, Bears fans. Dante Pettis was the only other receiver with over 50 yards after 3 whole weeks of football. It's just been tough in Chicago. I have to at least bring up Cole Kmet, another guy that you may have drafted in fantasy and probably are extremely frustrated with. He was supposed to get solid targets, and he didn't even have a catch in week 1 or week 2. He only has 5 receptions all season for 56 yards. Now, I'm going to try to be positive here, and that's a very hard thing to do with this Bears team and Justin Fields, but we are going to try. For one, Chicago is 2-2. That's 500. It isn't awful, and things could be much worse. At the same time, Fields hasn't even started a full season yet, and most importantly, it's only week 4. I think the best excuse that I can give is that this is a new system with a new head coach. Matt Nagy is gone. Finally. And at the very least, the Bears offense should be a little better without him there. Chicago hired Matt Eberflus to be their next head coach, but the bigger move for the offense was him hiring Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator. It's supposed to be his job to scheme up for Justin Fields, and it's looked more like nobody on that staff even trusts him to throw the football. And how could you blame them? The Bears have almost completely just relied on the run game, and that's the only reason they've won 2 games this year. The run game has been the only positive on the offense at all, and it hasn't even been all the time. In week 1, David Montgomery didn't do much. He got carries though, and he had 17 carries. That's a lot of touches, but he only had 26 yards. Yeah, 26 yards on 17 carries. Montgomery had 1.5 yards per carry. That is awful. Against the Packers, he was much better with 122 yards on 15 carries, but Green Bay didn't really care to stop the run because they were kicking Chicago's ass. Montgomery ended up not even playing in week 4 after he suffered an injury in week 3, which did open the door for Khalil Herbert before week 1 was supposed to be. Everyone kind of expected the Chicago line to resemble a bunch of traffic cones trying to create lanes, but it hasn't been that bad. But I have to say, it also hasn't been good. I'm not really sure where the Bears even go from here. First and foremost, the Bears need to figure out if Justin Fields is the guy and do everything to answer that question, but they haven't. Chicago won't even let him throw the ball. In their defense, when he has, it's been pretty bad. But you're never going to know if you don't try. He doesn't have a true number 1 wide receiver, he doesn't have a good offensive line, and he's in a brand new offensive system he's probably still trying to learn.